Hello everyone. I'm glad that you've tuned in for this children's Bible class. This is for Sunday morning, July the 12th, or maybe you're watching it at some other time, that's fine. You know, for the next 3 Sundays, today and the 2 Sundays following, we're going to have a Bible class that goes back a little bit on something we studied about recently. Do you remember Ruth? Ruth was the subject of our Bible class in the last lesson of the last quarter, the last book that we went through. In just a moment, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about her and some of those other Bible characters a little bit more. Now, Mr. Ben's not here today because he's been out of town this week, but hopefully he'll be with us the next 2 lessons that we do. And as well, we are planning to do the next 3 Wednesday nights Bible trivia on our Facebook and the private page there, the Fun Activities page. I hope you'll tune in to that. Now, I want to tell you something else, that this lesson and the next 2 lessons are going to be aimed a little bit more at our younger children. So there's some of you in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, this is a little bit below your grade level. I hope you'll listen anyway. Maybe you'll pick up some names or some things to remember. But again, we're aiming at some of our younger children here. Now, the questions on Wednesday night, not so much. There'll be some harder questions in there too. And so let's talk about Ruth. And let's see what we can remember about her in the lesson there a few weeks ago. Now, if you recall that in Israel there was a famine going on. Do you remember what a famine is? You see, a famine is a time when there is little or no food to eat because maybe it wasn't raining and everything was real dry. And so the crops weren't growing. And so people were getting hungry. They didn't have enough food. And so there was this couple. Now, the husband's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. Now, we'll be talking more about Naomi, but try to remember Elimelech. I know that's a harder name to remember. Can you say it? Elimelech and his wife, Naomi. So it seems that they had 2 sons. And because of the famine, they decided to move where they could find food, because there was food available in other places. Now, they lived, if you remember our map here, if you remember the days of the divided kingdom, here's what this map is. You see Jerusalem? Well, not far from Jerusalem, just a little bit south, about 6 miles south of Jerusalem, is Bethlehem. That's where they lived. And so there was not food here, and so they decided to go to Moab. Moab, way over here. Now look, that's a long way. And they couldn't just jump in their car and drive over there. They didn't have cars. And so they had to walk all that way to the other side of the Dead Sea. Or maybe they had a camel, and they could ride a camel, or maybe a donkey. But it was a long way. It was a different country. But there was food there. So what was that couple's name? Now, Elimelech and Naomi, and they had 2 sons. And so they went to Moab where they could find food. Well, you know what happened after they were there for a while? Elimelech died. And so that left Naomi alone. Well, she had her sons. There were 2 sons, and they married 2 girls there from Moab. And those girls' names was Orpah and Ruth. Now, you might remember Ruth because we talked about her a lot. But there were 2 daughter-in-laws of Naomi, Orpah and Ruth. But in a little bit of time, Naomi's sons passed away. And that just left her daughter-in-laws, Orpah and Ruth. And so it come to be that they learned that God was providing food again for their people, for Naomi's people back up in Judah. And so she thought about going back there because there was food again. But she didn't want her daughter-in-laws to have to come with her because that's not where they were from. They were from Moab. That's where their people are at. And so she told them, you can stay here if you want. And Orpah decided to stay there. She was going to stay home in Moab. But, Ruth, do you know what she said? She said, no, Ruth, Naomi, she said, I'm going to come with you. And so that's what she decided to do. And so she decided to travel back to Judah, back to the land of Israel, with her mother-in-law, Naomi. You know, that was a very nice thing for her to do. And it says something to us about how much she loved her mother-in-law, that she was willing to leave her people in Moab, her family. She left them so that she could travel back to the land of Israel with Naomi. I think that says some really good things about Ruth. And in fact, we'll talk more about that as our story goes on. But we want to remember some things in this lesson. And maybe we'll talk about it again Wednesday night. Now, what were the names of the two we started out with? Remember, the husband's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. And they had to leave the land of Israel because of the famine. Remember, the famine. There was no food. And so when they got to the land of Moab, their sons married two girls there, Orpah and Ruth, but they died. Orpah stayed there in Moab, but Ruth went with Naomi back to Naomi's home. That's some things for us to talk about this week. And I hope, even if you look at the video again, try to remember these names and remember these people, because next week and the week after that, we're going to be talking about some of them some more. It's a short lesson today. The next two lessons I think will be rather short. It's review, but now we're focusing, parents, we're focusing this time on trying to help our children remember these names and to remember who these people were. And if you have a map at home, we can show them Bethlehem and where they went from Bethlehem all the way down to the land of Moab. We can make those points and make sure they can find those on the map. I'm glad you tuned in today for this short lesson. God willing, we'll see you on Wednesday night. Bible trivia, 7 o'clock on Wednesday night. Have a good day.